They left me standing outside the restaurant I paid for, the air thick with humiliation. Ryan's message flashed on my phone. "We've got a table but no seat for you." But this was my investment, my vision, my name on every document they'd signed. By morning, they wouldn't just lose a seat. They'd lose everything they thought they owned. I wasn't waiting for an invitation anymore. I was taking back what was always mine. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. The air outside Juniper and Slate smelled like burnt rosemary and charred butter, expensive food, sizzling just beyond the glass. Joan Whitaker, 68, stood near the front entrance, her linen blouse clinging slightly to her back in the late Texas humidity. The golden letters of the restaurant's name glinted above her, letters she had indirectly paid for. A soft breeze lifted her silver hair, freshly set for the occasion. She glanced at her watch. 6:42 p.m. She had arrived early, never liked being late. She'd even parked at the garage across the street instead of using the valet just to avoid a fuss. Her son Ryan had texted her yesterday. "Come hungry, we've got a table outside, it's gonna be perfect." Now she stood outside the host stand, watching a college-aged hostess with long lashes and a headset greet walk-ins with polished efficiency. Joan stepped forward. "Hi, I'm supposed to be meeting a party. Last name, Whitaker." The hostess clicked something on her tablet. "Whitaker. Her glossy nails tapped. "I'm not seeing that name. Maybe it's under something else?" Joan smiled politely. "Could it be under Ryan? Or Tara Whitaker?" More tapping. A brief pause. "Sorry, I don't have a reservation under any of those." Joan blinked. "Maybe it's on the patio?" The hostess tilted her head. "The patio's full tonight. Private party." Joan took a step to the side and peered through the glass. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the dining area buzzed with laughter and champagne flutes. She spotted Ryan, unmistakable in his slim black blazer, leaning over the table telling some grand story with hand motions and a grin. Across from him sat Tara, her blonde hair swept into a sleek ponytail, legs crossed, gold heels dangling. She was mid-toast with two other couples Joan didn't recognize. Her seat at the table was empty. Joan's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her phone. No missed calls, no texts. She opened the conversation thread with Ryan. The last message still read, 6:30 sharp, patio, dress nice. She did. She took one tentative step toward the window. Ryan noticed her first. His expression flickered, half recognition, half discomfort. He nudged Tara subtly, who turned her head with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. Tara gave a little wave, like spotting a distant acquaintance at the grocery store. Then she turned back to the group and raised her glass again. No one motioned her inside. Joan stood frozen, one hand still loosely holding her phone, the other gripping the strap of her bag. Her heart beat heavily as if she'd climbed the steps instead of taken the elevator. Behind her, the hostess had already moved on to the next guests. Someone asked if they could get a photo by the wine wall. Joan stepped back off to the side, out of the frame of the restaurant's curated ambiance. She tried to rationalize it. Maybe they were finishing up? Maybe they didn't realize the hostess didn't have her down? She pulled out a handkerchief and dabbed her forehead. The sun was setting behind the buildings now, casting long shadows over the plaza. From inside, the restaurant glowed warm and golden, filled with the clink of flatware and curated Spotify jazz. Joan turned slowly and walked toward the far edge of the patio, pretending to admire the planters lining the iron fence. From that angle, she could see the full table, see the food being passed around, see Tara laugh, actually laugh, at something the man next to her said, see Ryan raise his glass to the group, no third chair, no place setting, no extra wine glass. She wasn't late, she wasn't forgotten. She was never invited. A single tear welled in the corner of her right eye. She blinked it away before it could fall. Her hand reached into her purse again, not for a tissue this time, but for something else. She pulled out a folded paper envelope, thick with documents. Her fingers curled around it tightly. As the restaurant roared with laughter behind the glass, Joan turned and walked back toward the parking garage, her steps slow, steady. She pressed the elevator button and didn't look back. Inside the envelope, beneath the flap, was the original lease agreement. Joan's condo was silent except for the soft hum of her refrigerator and the distant echo of a boat horn drifting across Ladybird Lake. The night had long settled outside. Dusky blues faded into darkness, and her porch light glowed faintly through the blinds. She didn't bother turning on the television. There was nothing she wanted to drown it out. She stepped out of her heels by the entryway. One fell sideways with a soft thud. She left it there. Her purse landed with a dull thump on the kitchen counter. She slipped off her watch and set it next to her coffee maker, the one Ryan had rolled his eyes at last Christmas. "You still use drip?" "Mom, seriously, pour over or nothing." She walked to the hallway closet, not for a coat. It was August in Texas. But behind the vacuum, the toolbox, and a rolled-up yoga mat she hadn't uncurled in months, was the filing cabinet. A solid black metal beast with drawers that stuck if you didn't pull them straight. She tugged the middle drawer. It groaned but obeyed. Inside, tax returns, HOA letters, appliance warranties, and then, clipped neatly in a manila folder, labeled in her tidy handwriting, Whitaker Restaurant Group, Legal and Finance. She carried it to the kitchen table. No wine, no tea, just the folder and the hard overhead light casting clean shadows. She opened it. Inside were copies of everything. The lease agreement, the bank documents, the vendor contracts, even the draft menu, annotated in her pen. She flipped past pages until her hand paused over the one she knew would matter most. Operating agreement, ownership, and stakeholders. Joan adjusted her glasses. The ink was still crisp. Her name, in black capital letters, was listed as the majority partner and primary leaseholder. Ryan Whitaker, minority partner, 40%. Joan Whitaker, majority partner, 60%. She remembered when he brought the paperwork over, flustered and fast-talking, trying to seem more knowledgeable than he was. She had read every line, slowly, had him initial every key clause, including this one, buyout clause, Section 9C. The majority partner retains the right to initiate lease termination or transfer of interest with 30 days written notice. Joan underlined it now with a silver pen. The silence in the condo shifted. Not louder, but heavier, more focused. She picked up her phone from the table and scrolled until she found the contact. Eddie Morales, Frostbank. She pressed call. 3 rings, then a voice, calm, practiced, and slightly raspy. Eddie Morales. "Hi, Eddie, it's Joan Whitaker." "Well, hey there, Joan, everything all right?" She hesitated for only a beat. "I just pulled the original investment file, wanted to confirm a few things." "Shoot." "My stake in the restaurant. I'm still listed as majority partner, correct? Ryan's stake is 40%? There was a short silence on the line, papers rustling. Eddie had been her banker for nearly 15 years. He didn't rush. "Yep," he said. 60-40 split, just like when we filed it. You're still the primary on the lease and the business account is in your name. Ryan only has disbursement access." Joan let out a quiet breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thanks," she said. "Everything all right over there?" he asked again, softer now. She paused. "It will be." Eddie cleared his throat. "If you're thinking about making changes, give me a heads up. I'll make sure you're covered." "I appreciate that," she said. "I might need your help soon." They hung up. Joan closed the folder and sat still for a moment, eyes fixed on nothing. Then she reached for a yellow sticky note and scribbled 2 words. Karen Doyle. She pressed the note flat to the folder. Outside, a light drizzle had begun to fall against the windows, dotting the glass in uneven patterns. The morning light slanted through the blinds in long golden lines, painting Joan's hardwood floor with quiet purpose. She sat at her kitchen table, shoulders squared, a fresh legal pad open in front of her, and her reading glasses balanced low on her nose. Her coffee had gone cold an hour ago, untouched beside her, but she hadn't noticed. Across the table, documents lay in careful stacks. Contracts, receipts, bank printouts, and email chains that told a longer story than anyone had dared say out loud. Each paper she lifted and scanned added weight to the sensation forming deep in her chest, not panic or grief, but something slower burning, a quiet, settled determination. She made neat check marks beside the copies she'd already packed into a file folder, her handwriting deliberate, the same steady cursive she'd used in college lectures and tax audits. She'd labeled each section with color-coded tabs: ownership agreement, lease terms, vendor invoices, all of it preserved, notarized, filed, and now, finally, ready to be seen again. Her phone, face down on the table, buzzed once and lit up. Ryan. She hesitated before flipping it over. The message preview filled the screen. Last night's dinner was next level. Chef Lena crushed it. VIP night went off without a hitch. Thought you'd appreciate this. Attached was a photo. Joan tapped it open, bracing herself. The image was saturated in golden light. Strings of Edison bulbs hung above long patio tables dressed in crisp white linens and flanked by smiling guests. Tara stood front and center, cocktail in hand, her hair sleek and glossy, mid-laugh. Ryan stood just behind her, his arm thrown casually around a woman Joan didn't recognize. Every face was bright with satisfaction, a little drunk on success. Joan zoomed in without thinking. Every seat filled. No sign of an empty place, no space reserved for a mother, no candle waiting to be lit for her arrival. She saved the photo, then set the phone aside without replying. Moments later, her screen lit up again. Instagram. She instinctively swiped up. Tara had posted the same image, this time with a caption so performative, Joan could practically hear the tone in her voice. What a night! Our vision's finally becoming real. Couldn't be more grateful. Next chapter. The Wit. Joan blinked. The Wit? She murmured, her voice low, dry. She stared at the post a long moment before pulling it into a screenshot, then printing it directly from her home office setup. A few keystrokes later, the paper slid out of her desktop printer. She added it to the folder, placing it beneath the vendor contracts Tara had once refused to read. Back at the table, Joan picked up the sticky note she'd written the night before. Karen Doyle. She found the number with little effort. Karen was well known in Austin for her work on small business ownership cases. Joan dialed, each ring sounding louder than it should have in the stillness. Doyle and Patton, this is Meredith speaking. How may I assist you today? Hi, yes. I'm looking to schedule a consultation with Karen Doyle regarding a small business partnership. My name is Joan Whitaker. There was a moment of typing, keys clicking softly through the line. Let me check Ms. Doyle's availability. She's booked through the end of the week, but hold on. We just had a cancellation for tomorrow morning, 9:15. Would that work for you? Joan didn't hesitate. Yes, that's perfect. Wonderful. Please bring any and all relevant documents. Our office is in the Capitol View building on 15th and San Antonio, Suite 314. Joan jotted it all down in the margin of her notepad. After hanging up, she closed the folder slowly, as if sealing something in. Outside, the low hum of Austin traffic drifted through the window, mixing with the high chirp of grackles gathering near the lake trail. Life went on. So would she. She slipped the folder into her structured leather tote, the one she used to bring to client audits back when numbers still paid the bills and people still respected how they worked. She stood, adjusted her blouse in the hallway mirror, and met her own gaze. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was focus. Joan arrived 10 minutes early. The Capitol View building stood quietly dignified between newer glass towers downtown, its limestone facade resisting the flash of its surroundings. She bypassed the elevator and took the stairs, 3 flights, slow and measured, each step a way to settle her breath and sharpen her intention. The leather tote on her shoulder felt heavier than usual, but not unwelcome. Suite 314 was tucked at the end of a quiet hallway. The reception area was sleek but unfussy, cream walls, a real ficus in the corner, and a framed print of the Texas Business Code hanging behind the front desk. Ms. Whitaker? The assistant asked, rising with a kind smile. Joan nodded. Yes. Ms. Doyle will see you now. The door opened to reveal Karen Doyle, a woman with iron-gray hair cut in a sharp bob and glasses that looked expensive but not trendy. She stood to greet Joan with a firm handshake and a tone that carried both precision and calm. Come in. Let's get into it. Karen's office was lined with shelves full of organized casebooks and 3 framed photographs, one of her standing before the Capitol building, one with a golden retriever, and one of her much younger, flanked by two suited men, presumably colleagues from a time when fewer women occupied rooms like this. Joan set the leather tote carefully on the polished desk and slid the folder out, placing it between them. "I've reviewed everything twice," she said, her voice even. "But I want your take." Karen nodded and opened the folder. As she flipped through the pages, the partnership agreement, the lease terms, tax records, correspondence, her eyes moved quickly but never carelessly. She took notes in a lined pad with a fountain pen and occasionally underlined a phrase with a practiced hand. Joan sat with her hands clasped in her lap, her eyes on the spine of one of Karen's books, Termination Without Cause, Legal Pathways for Small Business Owners. "Everything's in order," Karen said finally, sitting back. "The original agreement lists you as majority leaseholder and investor. The buyout clause is enforceable. There's no ambiguity." Joan's breath loosened slightly. "And if I choose to exercise it?" "You're well within your rights," Karen said. "You can initiate dissolution of the lease with 30 days' notice. Since you're the majority partner, you don't need consent from Ryan or his wife." Joan nodded. "They don't know that." "They'll know soon enough." Karen pulled a blank form from her drawer and began filling it out, the formal lease termination intent, custom lettered for Joan's file. Her pen scratched confidently over the surface. "I'll need your signature here," she said, turning the document toward Joan. "Then I'll prepare a certified letter for delivery to the landlord and a copy for your partners." Joan reached for the pen. Her hand hovered for half a second before she pressed the tip to paper and signed her name. Fluid, unfaltering, the way she had for years on client returns and bank documents and mortgage paperwork. But this felt different. Final. Not administrative. Karen flipped the page and began preparing the accompanying letter. "You'll want to notify your bank that legal counsel has been retained. Who handles your accounts?" "Eddie Morales," Joan said. "Frost Bank." Karen didn't look up. "Good man. He'll wire funds to cover legal fees and filings. I'll bill you at a flat rate. No nickel and diming." Joan gave a small nod of gratitude. Her phone, which she had silenced before entering the office, buzzed once in her tote. She didn't reach for it. Karen sealed the documents into a thick envelope and pressed it closed. "I'll have my clerk file the paperwork with the property management company this afternoon. You'll receive confirmation by close of business tomorrow." As she stood to leave, Joan reached out and shook Karen's hand once more. It was firm again, not performative, but real. "Thank you," Joan said. "I didn't want to come in angry. I wanted to come in ready." Karen gave the faintest smile. "You did." Outside, the clouds had begun to cluster low and heavy over downtown, casting a cool gray over the skyline. Joan stepped onto the sidewalk and inhaled the scent of wet concrete and ozone. She didn't rush. She didn't check her phone. She was halfway down the block when it rang again. This time, she answered. "Joan Whitaker," she said calmly. "Hey, Joan, it's Eddie," came the familiar gravel-tinged voice. "I just saw the legal retainer hit your account. I'm calling to confirm. You really going through with it?" Joan slowed her pace. "Yes, Eddie, we're moving forward." There was a pause, then a quiet nod of understanding through the line. "Well," he said, "in that case you've still got runway. We'll keep it clean on our end." "Thank you," she said, "for not asking why." "I don't need to," he replied. "People don't file clean paperwork for messy feelings." The certified letter was signed for at 9:48 a.m., according to the delivery confirmation email Eddie had forwarded her with the subject line, "Confirmation, lease termination notice delivered." Joan read it once and archived it without ceremony. She didn't need the receipt to know it had landed. She felt it in her bones, the kind of shift that echoes silently but unmistakably. There are moments in life when the earth doesn't quake, but something still splits. By 10:03, her phone rang. Tara's name flashed across the screen in all caps, as if the phone itself were bracing for volume. Joan let it buzz for a full 5 seconds before answering. She kept her voice cool and flat. "Hello?" Tara didn't bother with a greeting. "What the hell is this?" she snapped, her voice sharp with the kind of panic that only comes from someone who thought they were untouchable. "Are you kidding me right now? You're trying to shut us down after everything we've done? After all the money you made us waste on that remodel?" Joan stayed silent. "You didn't even call us first. You just sent some legal crap in an envelope and think we're supposed to what? Bow down? Say thank you for blowing up our lives? Joan finally spoke, her tone still unshaken. This isn't the first time you made plans without consulting me. That's not the same and you know it, Tara hissed. This is betrayal, Joan. You blindsided us. You blindsided Ryan. You didn't even leave a chair at the table, Joan replied calmly. Tara's breath caught on the other end of the line. I'm not doing this with you, Joan said, already moving toward the red end call button. Good luck. She hung up before the next insult could land. A few minutes passed, enough for Joan to refill her coffee and let the silence in the kitchen steady her again, before the phone rang a second time. This time it was Ryan. She stared at the screen for a moment before answering. His voice came through softer than Tara's, even rehearsed, but there was a current of desperation underneath it. Hey, Mom, can we talk? You're talking, she said, not helping him. I mean really talk. Look, I didn't know Tara was gonna react like that. I get why you're mad, I really do. I should have called you back after the opening. I just figured things were crazy, and I didn't want to pile on. Joan didn't interrupt him, let him spiral. We thought the restaurant needed a new look, he continued. Something clean, modern, something that reflected the direction we were going. That's why we rebranded, but it's still ours, Mom. We built it together. You changed the name, she said quietly. Ryan exhaled, as if trying to slow the collapse. We wanted something that would get people's attention. It wasn't personal. It's always personal when my name disappears from something I funded. I'm sorry, he said, and for a second it even sounded sincere. We got caught up. I did. And maybe you're right to be mad. But do we really need to go nuclear like this? I mean, lease termination? That's serious. Can't we just, reset? Give it another shot? Joan stirred her coffee gently, the spoon clinking once, deliberate. I'll think about it. Okay, Ryan said, relief bleeding through his voice. Thank you. That's all I'm asking. They hung up, and the quiet returned. Joan didn't think about it. She opened her laptop instead and pulled up the file from Karen Doyle's office, confirming that the certified copy had been delivered to the property manager and the notice date logged. She was mid-scroll through the attachment when her phone lit up again, this time with a name that made her pause. Chef Lena Brooks. Joan hadn't heard from Lena directly in weeks, not since the early tastings. She picked up the phone slowly, unsure what might be waiting on the other end. Joan? Lena's voice was hushed, tense, like she didn't want to be overheard. Yes? I saw the letter, Lena said. Tara threw it across the prep counter like a grenade. I can imagine. A beat of silence passed. Then softer. I've been waiting for something like this. I wanted to ask if we could talk. About? I want out, Lena said. And if you're planning something new, I'd like to work for you directly. Joan closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair, a slow breath passing through her lips. Let's talk tomorrow, she said. The cafe wasn't far, just a few blocks east of South Congress, tucked between a record shop and a florist that always smelled like eucalyptus and pink carnations. Joan had chosen it intentionally, small, quiet, familiar. They made their eggs properly and didn't serve drinks in mason jars. She sat near the window in a booth with a cracked red cushion, her tote bag beside her, a black coffee cooling in front of her. No sugar, no cream, just the kind of bitter that reminded her she was wide awake. Across from her, Lena Brooks looked more tired than she had during opening week. Her dark hair was pulled into a bun that had probably started out neat this morning, but had since surrendered to stress and sweat. She wore a plain gray t-shirt with faint grease stains along the hem and a pair of kitchen clogs that squeaked slightly every time she shifted her weight. I didn't want to say any of this over the phone, Lena began, wrapping both hands around her mug. Too many ears in the kitchen, and I wasn't sure if you were serious. Joan didn't push. She let the silence stretch, the way she had with clients who needed to say something they'd been swallowing for too long. Lena took a breath, then leaned forward slightly. They're bleeding the place dry. Joan tilted her head. I mean it. The remodel, the marketing firm, the branding consultant Tara brought in from LA, we're spending more than we're taking in, by a lot, Every time I try to rein it in, Tara says I'm being negative. Ryan tells me to trust the process, but the staff sees it. Everyone does. We can't even afford a backup dishwasher this month. Joan nodded slowly, her hands folded on the table. They moved our best bartender to the patio just because he looks better in photos, Lena went on, her voice lowering. I lost 2 line cooks last week. They said they were sick of being treated like props. And you? Joan asked, her voice gentle but clear. I'm stuck, Lena admitted. Until now, I thought I was, but after that letter showed up, it gave me an opening. Joan studied her. Why come to me? Lena hesitated. Because you're the only one who knows what the restaurant was supposed to be. Before the lights and filters and cocktail influencers, you understood that food mattered, not just image. Joan didn't smile yet, not quite, but something eased behind her eyes. There's more, Lena added. The staff? They'd follow you. Not all at once, not loudly, but if you took over, they'd show up, me included. Joan was quiet for a moment. She reached for her coffee, took a sip, then set the cup down and folded her napkin carefully, her motions deliberate. They never saw the kitchen, she said quietly. Not really. Not even when I was funding the walk-ins and writing checks for the vendors. To them it was just a concept, a launch, something they could build a lifestyle around. Lena nodded, eyes locked on Joan's. Joan pulled her phone from her tote and opened her recent messages. Eddie's name was near the top. She typed, "Can we legally rebrand under a new name if I retain lease control?" She hit send. Lena watched her, but didn't interrupt. The reply came back in under a minute. Short answer, yes. You own the name rights tied to the LLC and original concept. Call me when you're ready. Joan placed the phone face down and finally looked up at Lena. Are you ready to leave them? She asked. Lena didn't flinch. I've already packed my knives. For the first time in what felt like weeks, Joan's mouth curved into a real smile. It wasn't triumphant or smug, just quiet, earned, and deeply personal. The kind of smile that starts in the eyes and works its way down to the bones. By early evening, the Texas sky had settled into that soft, bruised shade between amber and lavender, the light hanging long over the trees that edged Lady Bird Lake. Joan sat on her front porch with her reading glasses perched low, a half-finished quilt draped across her lap, and a needle threaded neatly through its edge. The porch was quiet except for the rhythmic creak of her rocking chair and the faint hum of cicadas just beginning their evening rise. She found comfort in the slowness of it, cotton fabric under her fingers, the tiny regular pull of each stitch. This was a kind of work that expected nothing flashy, no hashtags, no marketing budget, just precision, patience, and a steady hand. Her phone buzzed twice on the small side table next to her. She ignored it at first, but after the third buzz, curiosity broke her rhythm. She reached for the screen and saw the alert, "Tara Whitaker has tagged you in a post." Joan blinked. That was unexpected. She tapped the notification, and the Instagram app opened into a bright photo. Tara stood on the restaurant patio again, this time holding a clipboard and gesturing toward the outdoor bar as if mid-conversation. The caption read, "Running a business means adapting, no matter what storms come your way. Here's to staying grounded, staying grateful, and not letting negativity win. Leadership, women in business, the wit life." The comments were already climbing. "So inspiring, Tara. Keep pushing. Real ones always rise. Let the haters hate. You're glowing." Joan stared at the post for a long moment, then tapped the 3 dots in the corner and muted Tara's account. No fanfare, no announcement, just silence. She set the phone back down and reached again for her quilt, folding a new edge over with practiced fingers. The needle slipped back into motion like it had never left. She'd just tied off a corner stitch when her voicemail icon blinked. Another buzz. She pressed play. Ryan's voice filled the space around her, quiet, worn, uncertain. "Hey, I know you're probably ignoring me, and I get it, I do, I don't know what to do anymore. Tara's making a mess, Mom. She keeps saying we can fix this, but nothing's getting fixed. We're losing vendors, Lena's basically gone, and the front-of-house staff is already threatening to walk. I don't know what you want me to say. Please, just call me back. Let's meet. One last time. Just give me 5 minutes. Joan listened until the recording ended, then she deleted it. Inside the house, the kitchen clock chimed 6. She rose, folded the quilt, and carried it inside, her joints stiff from sitting, but her mind clear. There, waiting in her inbox, was an email from Karen Doyle. Subject line, lease termination. Finalized. She opened it and read through the brief message. Filed, stamped, on record. The clock has started, 30 days from today. KD Joan clicked the PDF attachment and scanned the stamped termination order. Her name looked stark against the official header, not tucked beneath Ryan's, not buried in footnotes. Just hers, bold, centered. She saved the file and backed it up to a secure folder before closing her laptop. Outside, dusk had deepened. Porch lights flickered on down the street. She returned to her rocking chair, a fresh cup of chamomile in hand this time, and settled back into the steady rhythm of stillness. She thought about the post. The way Tara always twisted the narrative, turned everything into a curated performance. But Tara had missed one truth Joan had spent decades learning. Control wasn't loud. It wasn't branded. And it sure as hell didn't need to be posted. It arrived in a plain white envelope, postmarked from the Travis County Clerk's office. Joan sliced it open with a letter opener she hadn't used in years, solid brass with a wooden handle, a gift from a client back when her office had a corner window and a 3-month waiting list. She unfolded the document slowly, her reading glasses already in place. One sheet, official language, centered at the top in bold type, notice of property auction, lot number 229, B, Juniper and Slate leasehold. She scanned the details carefully, every word deliberate. The public auction was scheduled for the following Thursday, 10 a.m., at the City Courthouse Annex near Guadalupe Street. Winning bidder to assume active lease upon close. Majority partner had the right to attend and observe. No appeals, no extensions. The kitchen clock ticked behind her, too loud in the morning stillness. She placed the notice flat on the counter and stared at it for a moment, as if memorizing the finality of it. A soft chime from her laptop signaled a new email. She opened it. From Karen Doyle. Subject, re-auction notification. You should go. It's cleanest if you're there, and frankly, it keeps them honest. I'll be present in case anything comes up. No surprises. Bring ID and any remaining receipts tied to maintenance expenses. They still matter in the final valuation. Joan tapped a quick reply. I'll be there. She was closing the laptop when her phone lit up again, this time with a name she hadn't seen in a few days. Ryan. She stared at it for a long beat before opening the message. Hey, heads up. We're doing our anniversary party that same week. Booked the space already. Might be weird timing, but figured we'd make it work. Hope you're doing okay. Joan's lips twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile and wasn't quite a smirk. She read it again, as if to confirm the absurdity of it. Then she set the phone down without replying. She turned back to the letter from the county clerk. Thursday, 10 a.m. The same day her son and his wife had chosen to throw a party to celebrate themselves. The irony sat there like an unopened bottle of wine. Later that afternoon, as she brought in the laundry from the line, her phone buzzed again. Instagram. Atara.Whitaker posted a new photo. Joan considered ignoring it, but something told her to look. When she opened the app, she was met with a glossy image of the dining room newly redecorated. Gone were the matte black sconces Joan had paid extra for during the renovation. In their place hung golden industrial-style fixtures, dangling like a Pinterest tutorial. The reclaimed wood bar was now wrapped in soft pink neon, and a small shelf of books had been replaced by a backdrop for selfies, faux greenery, and a white sign that read number Wit Vibes Only in cursive letters. The caption read, Counting down to the party of the year. New space, new energy, same magic. See y'all next Thursday, yard anniversary week. The Wit Dollar Design Matters. Joan took a slow breath through her nose. She looked carefully at the image, zooming in on the background. New chairs, new silverware, even the mural on the back wall, painted over. The stylized juniper branches she'd approved with the artist's sketchbook in hand were now gone, buried under a peach-toned geometric pattern and a phrase that read, "Own the room." Without a word, she took a screenshot. Then another. Then one more from the Post's carousel showing a menu mock-up on a clipboard with a glossy cocktail list full of floral syrups and infused foams. Not a single dish remained from the original concept. She moved to her laptop, created a folder labeled Evidence Design Misuse, and dragged the photos in. One by one. Neat. Labeled. Time-stamped. Then she closed the lid. Outside, the wind picked up slightly, rattling the porch swing chain. Joan stepped outside, wrapped a light cardigan around her shoulders, and sat. She watched the sky as it shifted, the clouds moving from soft brush strokes to something more defined, darker, purposeful, like a front on the edge of arrival. The Travis County Courthouse Annex didn't look like a place where futures changed. It smelled faintly of copy toner and old HVAC, with fluorescent lighting that gave everything a flat, overexposed hue. But by 9:50 a.m., the auction hall on the second floor was humming with quiet energy. Rows of metal chairs lined the room in tight rows, half filled with local property attorneys, a handful of real estate scouts, and a few entrepreneurs scanning the auction bulletin like it was a menu. At the front, a dais was set up with a folding table and a stack of manila folders. Each file held one life-altering transaction. Joan entered with Karen Doyle at her side, both women dressed in quiet authority. Joan in slate gray slacks and a tailored blouse, Karen in her standard navy pantsuit. No dramatic entrances, no fanfare, just presence. They took seats in the back row, near the exit. Joan had brought a notebook and a pen. Not to scribble strategy, she didn't need to. It was more for ritual, a reminder of how she'd once sat through hours-long audit hearings with nothing but ink and numbers to keep her focused. She glanced toward the front as the clerk took his place and called the session to order. Property after property was announced in clipped tones. A duplex near South Lamar, a parcel of undeveloped land near the airport, a food truck license, then, next item. Lot number 229B, commercial leasehold. Known property, juniper and slate. Heads lifted. Someone in the second row whispered to their colleague. Karen leaned slightly toward Joan. You'll want to watch the room. This isn't just real estate, it's a headline. Joan didn't flinch. She watched instead, the way old gamblers watch the table, not the dice. The clerk continued. Opening bid set at $110,000. A pause. Then, 120, called a voice in the middle row. 140, followed almost immediately. 160, 175. The bids climbed faster than Joan expected. She kept her face unreadable, but her hands were steady in her lap. She noticed Ryan 3 rows ahead, seated next to Tara, both of them stiff, Tara's jaw tight enough to crack enamel. Neither turned to look at her. The bidding passed 200,000, then 220, then 235. Murmurs rippled across the room. A man in a checkered blazer raised a finger. 250. The room held its breath. No counter. The clerk waited. Going once, going twice. Sold, he said, pounding the gavel with unnecessary finality. To bidder 114. Karen smiled faintly. That's well above their sunk cost. Joan nodded once. They never calculated correctly. From the side of the room, a clerk gestured her forward to the disbursement table. Joan rose calmly, retrieved her ID, and signed the appropriate form. The woman behind the folding table handed her a check, her majority cut, issued immediately. It was printed on pale blue paper, thick and crisp. She folded it once, tucked it into a slim envelope, and returned to her seat without ceremony. Up front, Ryan was arguing with a county official. Joan couldn't hear the words, but the posture said enough. Rigid, red-faced, lips thin with disbelief. Tara had crossed her arms and looked away, already defeated. Joan didn't meet their eyes as she passed. She didn't need to. The check in her bag weighed more than any apology they hadn't offered. She was nearly at the door when she heard her name, not called loudly, but with deliberate quiet. Joan. She turned. Eddie Morales stood near the side wall, out of place in his banker's suit among the patchy auction crowd. I wasn't expecting to see you here, she said. I came to make sure everything cleared, he said. Didn't want a hiccup. She gave a nod of gratitude, but he didn't move. He stepped closer, lowered his voice. "There's something else," he said. "The man who won the lease? Chef out of San Antonio. Young, quiet, but serious." Joan narrowed her eyes slightly, curious. Eddie continued, "He just asked me something off record. Said he wants to talk to you." "To me?" Joan asked. "He's interested in keeping the staff, keeping some of the menu routes. Said he'd only bid if there was a chance you'd stay on as a consultant." Joan blinked once. A slow breath lifted her chest. She didn't answer right away. "He doesn't want their branding," Eddie said. "He wants your foundation." The restaurant looked different in the morning light. Not better, not worse, just quieter, stripped of its usual pretense. No filters, no curated playlists. Just soft sun bleeding through the front windows and the hum of refrigeration units warming up to meet the day. Joan stepped inside through the side entrance, the same one she'd used when the space was still raw concrete and sawdust, before the permits, before the branding decks, before it became a stage set. Waiting near the chef's counter was a man she'd never met before, tall, mid-30s, with short-cropped hair and a notebook already in hand. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, not performatively, functionally. His name, according to Eddie, was Miguel Soria. He spotted her and immediately extended a hand. "Ms. Whitaker?" he asked, tone respectful but direct. "Joan is fine," she said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm but not overdone. "I appreciate you meeting me," Miguel said. "I know this whole transition probably feels complicated." Joan gave a small nod. Complicated's a generous word. Miguel smiled, not sheepish, but aware. "I'll be honest. I only put in a bid because Eddie mentioned the name behind the original concept. He said you had vision, not flash. Vision. He motioned for her to follow him toward the back dining area, where sunlight filtered across the empty tables. "I read the original menus," he said as they walked. "The seasonal structure, the partnerships with the farmers' co-op, even the handwritten notes on the prep flow for brunch. It all felt intentional." "That was the goal," Joan replied. She looked around. "A lot of it's been erased." "I'd like to bring it back," Miguel said. "With updates, sure, but rooted in what this place was meant to be, not what it became." They stopped at the edge of the kitchen pass where a prep list had been abandoned the night before, half-checked, grease-smudged. Miguel turned to her. "I want you to stay on, not full-time, but as a consultant, oversee the relaunch, help shape the bones. The team needs history as much as they need leadership." Joan studied him for a long moment, letting silence do its work. He didn't over-explain. He didn't flatter. He just waited, and that, more than anything, made her say yes. "I'll draw up a scope this week," she said. "Flat fee, no vanity title. You'll get honesty, not diplomacy." "I wouldn't ask for anything else," Miguel replied. They shook hands again, and that was it. No grand speeches, no staged photos, just two people agreeing to build something from the roots up. By the time Joan stepped back outside, the heat had begun to rise, the kind that clings to your skin before noon and reminds you you're deep in August. She was halfway to her car when her phone buzzed. The subject line stopped her cold. From Tara Whitaker. Subject: unbelievable. She opened it. "I just heard about the consulting offer. Wow, I guess stealing our business wasn't enough. Now you want to steal the story too? You really think people care about your vision? This place was always going to be ours, Joan. We built the brand. We built the energy. You were just a silent partner who couldn't stay silent. And now you're just... what? A footnote in something we created. Congratulations. Hope it was worth it." Joan read it once, then again, and without hesitation, she hit delete. No reply, no reaction. In her driveway that evening, she stepped out of the car to find Lena waiting near the porch with 2 iced coffees in hand, condensation sliding down the sides. "I heard," Lena said, holding one out. "You always do," Joan replied, accepting it. "You said no to a vanity title, but what about real respect?" Joan smiled and sipped. "That, I'll take." They sat on the porch as the sun dipped behind the trees, not talking strategy or bitterness, just breathing in the slow shift of what came next. He rang the bell just after 10. Joan had been folding laundry, nothing dramatic, Just a few cotton tops and a pair of pants she never seemed to wear anymore. The buzz of the dryer was still humming in the background as she opened the front door to find Ryan standing there, hands in his pockets, eyes puffy like he hadn't slept or hadn't expected to see her face this clear-eyed. "Hey," he said. Joan didn't answer at first. She stepped back slightly, letting the screen door creak open behind her. "I figured you might slam it in my face," he added. She tilted her head. "Would have been louder than I usually like to start a Tuesday." He gave a weak smile, the same one he used to flash as a boy when caught sneaking cookies before dinner. But this time, it didn't land. He stepped inside when she gave a quiet nod. Didn't sit, didn't ask for coffee, just stood awkwardly near the bookshelf, glancing at the pictures he'd walked past 1,000 times but never truly looked at. "I wanted to say, I don't know," he began. "Something." "You've said a lot already," she replied, calm, not cruel. "I didn't mean for it to go like this." Joan folded the last towel and set it on the table. "You didn't mean for it to go like this, but you made every decision that led here, you and Tara." "I know." She looked at him, her eyes clear but not unkind. "Respect was always free, Ryan. You just never offered it." That sentence landed heavier than he expected. He blinked, nodded once, sharp, almost like an apology, though it never formed into words. "I just thought," he started, then stopped. "Never mind." "You thought you could fix it with 5 minutes and a guilty look," Joan said, soft but direct. "But we're not 5-minute people anymore." He let out a long breath. Not angry, not defensive, just accepting. Then he turned, walked to the door, and paused before opening it. "I hope it works out," he said. "With the new guy, the kitchen, the whole thing." "It already is," Joan answered. He opened the door and stepped out into the mid-morning sun. This time she didn't watch him walk away. Instead, she reached for her keys. The food truck park just off East Riverside was already humming by noon. College students lounged under shaded picnic tables, tech freelancers tapped on laptops, and the smoky scent of birria and Korean BBQ wafted between rows of colorful trucks. Joan picked a table near the far edge, just out of reach of the main bustle, her iced coffee already half empty. She hadn't eaten yet, wasn't quite hungry, but she liked the atmosphere. It reminded her of something permanent and unpolished. No grand lighting design, no brand activations, just food and people. A familiar voice broke through the soft crowd noise. "Hope you saved me a seat," Eddie Morales said, balancing 2 foil-wrapped tacos and a bottle of Topo Chico in one hand. Joan gestured to the bench across from her. "I heard," he said, settling in, "about the offer, about the handoff, about the Tara email." "I didn't reply," Joan said. "I didn't think you would," he replied. "You were never one for theatrical exits." She smiled faintly. "Or dramatic entrances." Eddie handed her one of the tacos without asking. She took it, unwrapped it slowly, the scent of grilled shrimp and lime bright in the air. "I've been doing this a long time," Eddie said. "Seen a lot of clients get crushed by their own silence. You're the first one I've seen rebuild something from it." Joan didn't answer right away. She took a bite, slow and thoughtful. Then she looked up, eyes steady. "It's not silence anymore," she said. "It's just peace." They ate in quiet companionship, the kind that didn't need explaining or effort, the kind that comes only after the storm has already passed and the ground is beginning to dry. A breeze rolled through the park, lifting the edge of the napkin beside her. Joan reached out, caught it with ease, and let her hand linger over the table, steady, unhurried. For the first time in a very long time, she felt something she hadn't even known she'd lost. Light. The folder this time was thinner, not because it held less weight, but because this weight wasn't meant to be carried. It was meant to be given. Joan sat once more across from Karen Doyle, same clean-lined office, same view of the Capitol Dome through the narrow window. But everything else felt different. Her posture was looser. Her voice had shed its edge. The documents on the table between them didn't carry the language of conflict. They carried legacy. Karen glanced over the papers with the same precision as always, but this time there was no legal urgency, only care. "So," she said, tapping her pen against the desk. "You're sure about the name?" Joan smiled slightly. "The Whitaker Culinary Opportunity Fund has a strange ring to it, doesn't it?" "Sounds more like closure than charity," Karen replied, "which, in my experience, is usually a sign you're doing it right." Joan nodded. The idea had come to her not with drama, but in the quiet after lunch with Eddie. A passing comment he'd made about the dishwashers, the line cooks, the assistants who kept showing up even when the rest of the system failed them, the ones who got overlooked in favor of Instagrammable cocktails and influencer launch nights. "I don't want it to be about me," Joan said. "I want it to be about who they could become if someone just gave them a shot." Karen flipped to the signature page. One last line, and it's official. Joan reached for the pen. Her signature, once a reflexive movement over countless tax forms, moved with intention now. Slow, smooth, final. The ink dried before she let go of the pen. Karen closed the folder gently, like sealing something sacred. Eddie's got the financial paperwork on his end. He's officially listed as trustee. Right on cue, there was a soft knock on the office door. "Speak of the devil," Karen said. Eddie stepped in, wearing his usual charcoal blazer and a striped tie that was always one button too tight. He held a manila envelope and a slight smile. "Sorry to interrupt," he said. "I brought the deposit confirmation and endowment letter." Joan stood to greet him. He handed her the envelope, but she didn't open it right away. Instead, she looked between the two of them, her legal backbone and her financial anchor, and let the silence stretch for a moment. "This feels different," she said finally. "It is different," Eddie said. "You're not preserving something, you're planting it," Karen added. "And unlike a lease or a contract, this thing can grow, change lives. It doesn't just end at a signature." Joan didn't respond. She didn't need to. They walked together out of the office, past the same framed statues and clean walls, through the lobby of the Capitol View building, and out onto the sidewalk. The Austin sun greeted them with warmth, not pressure, light without heat. On the corner, a student with a chef's coat slung over their backpack waited at the crosswalk, earbuds in, eyes ahead. Joan glanced at them without meaning to. Just a second, maybe two. But it was enough. "This is where it should go," she said softly. "What's that?" Eddie asked. "The first grant," Joan said. "Someone like that. Someone no one's pitching to. No one's taking selfies with. Just a name on a schedule trying to get it right." They reached her car. Eddie handed her a small folder, identical to the one he'd just given Karen. "Final copy for your records." She took it and pressed it to her chest for a moment before slipping it into her bag. "I didn't think I'd feel this way," she said, almost to herself. "Not when the lease ended, not even when Ryan walked out. But this feels clean." Karen gave a short nod. "Justice isn't always a hammer, Joan. Sometimes it's a ladder." Joan watched them head off in separate directions. She didn't rush to her car. Instead, she turned and walked down the block. No destination, just sun and sidewalk, and a little more space in her chest than she'd had in months. The sign above the entrance was simple now, matte brushed steel on reclaimed wood, no neon, no hashtags. Just one word in quiet serif lettering: heritage. Joan stepped out of the rideshare and onto the newly swept sidewalk, heels clicking softly against the pavement. The air smelled like roasted garlic and rosemary from the test menu already running in the kitchen, with a touch of wood smoke rising from the reopened hearth oven. Late summer in Austin carried its usual weight, but today the heat didn't bother her. The front door opened before she could reach for it. "Ms. Whitaker!" a young woman in server blacks beamed, holding it wide. "You're early!" Joan smiled, genuinely. Old habit. Inside, the restaurant buzzed with quiet preparation, servers adjusting table settings, a sous chef checking herb garnishes under pendant lighting. It all felt real, lived in, purposeful, like the space finally had permission to be what it was always meant to become. Lena emerged from the kitchen in her crisp whites, wiping her hands on a towel and grinning like it was the first day of school. "You look like someone who finally slept," Joan said as they hugged. "I did," Lena replied, "and then I woke up and checked the books. For once, those weren't a nightmare either." They stepped through the dining room together, past new fixtures Joan had helped approve, muted tones, natural textures, reclaimed detail where it mattered. Every choice here had meaning, not marketing. At the bar, two men stood waiting with champagne flutes and relaxed confidence. Early 40s, sharp-eyed but not showy. "Joan, meet the new partners," Lena said. "Daniel Cho and Marcus Hale. Venture backed out of Denver but food first. No NFTs, no metaverse dining. Just real kitchens." Joan shook both their hands. "That's the first requirement," she said. "Second is not turning your staff into a mood board." Daniel chuckled. "We already failed that test once, in Chicago. We learned." Glasses were raised, a modest toast was made, nothing scripted, nothing streamed. "To heritage," Lena said, lifting her glass, "and to the Whitaker Culinary Opportunity Fund, where the next generation's real story begins." Joan nodded but didn't clink right away. "Only if they cook with intention," Marcus replied. "We wouldn't want it any other way." Outside, a small crowd had begun to gather. Joan moved to the front patio where ribbon had been stretched across the new entry railing. No press, just a few curious locals, 3 food bloggers, and a few neighborhood regulars holding iced coffees and curious smiles. Lena handed her the scissors. "You built this," she said. "From nothing but spreadsheets, checks, and a stubborn belief we'd find our way." Joan inhaled slowly, letting the moment settle in her chest before clipping the red ribbon clean through. A cheer went up, followed by applause from the staff lined up beside the windows. Then Joan saw her. Across the street, just behind the tinted glass of a white SUV, Tara Whitaker sat watching. Sunglasses on, mouth tight. She didn't step out. She didn't wave. But her posture was unmistakable. Spine straight, shoulders locked, phone frozen mid-scroll. She looked at the space like it had been stolen from her, even now, even after everything. Joan didn't flinch. She turned back toward the front door just as the first guests began filing in. Not influencers or paid hype, just neighbors, diners, people hungry for something honest. Lena walked beside her and gestured toward the hostess stand, where tonight's printed menu rested neatly on a clipboard. "I made a change," she said casually. "Just one addition." Joan looked down. Beneath the mains, nestled between the fire-roasted halibut and the summer squash risotto, was a new dish. Joan's braised short ribs, slow-cooked with thyme, fig demi, and smoked sea salt, served with buttermilk grits and blistered okra. Joan blinked, reading it twice, then turned to Lena. "You didn't have to—" "I know," Lena said. "But some names matter, not because they trend, because they endure." Joan didn't speak right away. She just reached out and touched the edge of the clipboard. The paper was smooth, the ink still faintly fresh. It felt like acknowledgement, like the right kind of echo. Outside, the SUV across the street finally pulled away. Inside, the kitchen bell rang once. Service had begun. By the following week, the new menus had arrived, printed on heavy cardstock the color of unbleached linen, the font elegant but unfussy. No QR codes, no influencer collabs, no slogans wrapped in hashtags, just food and stories. Right beneath the header mains, summer seasonal, it sat in quiet prominence. Joan's braised short ribs, slow-cooked with thyme, fig demi, and smoked sea salt, served with buttermilk grits and blistered okra, a nod to our original investor and quiet architect, J.W. customers noticed. At first, just a few, a middle-aged couple who asked to meet the Joan, a group of grad students who posted about it on Yelp with the tag number Real Roots, but by the third night, it became the most ordered item on the dinner menu. And not because it trended, because it tasted like someone gave a damn. A young man at table 4 had tears in his eyes when he told the server it reminded him of his grandmother's Sunday table. Someone else asked to take the menu home for framing. The staff began calling it the wit rib in the kitchen shorthand, and soon a small chalkboard appeared behind the bar. "Ask about our namesake dish." Joan hadn't planned to return so soon. "But Thursday night," Eddie insisted. "You're booked," he said over the phone. "No arguments. I already put our names in." The two of them arrived just before dusk, the golden hour light spilling across the patio like a blessing. The place was buzzing, but not in the artificial way Joan had once resented. This was genuine motion. Forks clinking, cocktails arriving, people laughing at real tables over real food. The hostess grinned the moment she saw them. "Right this way, Miss Whitaker." They were seated near the open kitchen window, where Lena caught Joan's eye and gave a subtle salute with her tasting spoon before disappearing behind the pass. Eddie lifted a menu, though he didn't need it. "Feels different sitting here tonight, huh?" Joan looked around. "It feels earned." They ordered 3 small plates, and of course the ribs. Eddie insisted on toasting, with a real glass of red this time, not his usual Topo Chico. "To the thing they thought they could erase," he said, "and to the version of you they never saw coming." Joan clinked his glass softly. "To the long game." Midway through the meal, Lena appeared tableside. Not flustered, not distracted, just present. She wiped her hands on her apron and nodded at the other diners. "Hope we're not interrupting," she said. "Always welcome," Joan replied. Lena turned to face the staff just outside the kitchen, 2 servers, a food runner, 1-line cook leaning over the counter. "Hey guys," she called. "Can I steal the floor for 10 seconds? The hum of the dining room softened just a bit. "I just want to say, this whole thing, this reopening, this second chance, it doesn't happen without Joan Whitaker. You see her name on the menu, sure, but she gave us more than a dish. She gave us a path." A round of applause started at the back and made its way forward. Not polite clapping, real, staff clapping, the kind that comes from people who know the work under the polish. Joan tried to wave it off. "That's enough." But Lena shook her head. "You planted this thing when the ground still looked scorched. We just watered it." Even Eddie tapped the table in slow applause. "Damn right," he muttered. Joan sat back, her eyes glassy but her smile grounded. She felt it, not the rush of vindication, something deeper, like she'd finally shifted from the footnotes of other people's dreams to the headline of her own. The server returned with dessert menus, but Joan pushed hers aside. "I don't need anything else." Eddie leaned in. "You full?" "I'm full," she said. "But it's not about food." The hostess recognized her before the door had fully closed behind her. "Welcome back, Ms. Whitaker," she said with a smile that felt lived in now, not rehearsed. "You're dining solo tonight?" Joan nodded, unwinding the lightweight scarf from her shoulders. "Just me." "No problem. We saved your spot." They led her past the soft chatter of midweek diners, parents with toddlers coloring on placemats, couples clinking wine glasses over shared desserts, a group of students gathered around a charcuterie board like it was sacred text. The air held warmth and basil and something toasted. It felt like August in all the right ways. Joan's table waited in the far corner, just beneath the framed sketch of the original kitchen blueprints Lena had insisted on hanging near the window. It wasn't the flashiest seat, but it had a view of everything that mattered: the kitchen pass, the front door, and the far booth where she'd once had to sit invisible to her own project. Now this one was hers, quiet, earned, chosen. A server approached with a linen menu already tucked under one arm and a corked bottle in the other. "Chef said if you came in tonight, she wanted to send something special, and that she'd be furious if you didn't order the ribs." Joan smiled. "Tell her I wouldn't dream of it." He poured her a generous glass of red, something bold with edges, and placed the menu down, though neither of them looked at it. They both knew what was coming. She took her time with the first sip, letting the room settle around her. No phone in her hand, no performance, just the scrape of chairs, the clink of cutlery, the occasional spark of laughter. Across the dining room, a family leaned close together over shared plates, elbows touching, eyes lit. A father stole a bite from his daughter's plate, prompting a shriek of mock offense. At the bar, a couple toasted to something unspoken, the kind of look that said, "We made it through something." Even the staff looked lighter, like gravity had shifted just enough to make the work feel joyful again. Joan placed her hand gently on the table's edge, fingers splayed slightly over the grain. The wood was warm beneath her touch. Solid. Familiar. The ribs arrived on a pale ceramic dish, garnished with fresh thyme and a curl of pickled okra. The smell alone could have brought her to tears, if she hadn't already run out of those months ago. She picked up her fork and took the first bite slowly. It was perfect, rich, deep, the kind of flavor that lingered long after the swallow, layered like memory. She didn't finish it all. She didn't need to. Halfway through the plate, she leaned back and let herself just be. No deals to close, no partners to please, no children to chase, no legacy to fight for. Just the hum of a place she'd helped build, reborn not in her image, but in her spirit. The server returned once more, with the check already comped, a note scribbled in Lena's handwriting on the back of the billfold. "You'll always have a table here. Just let us know when you want it." Joan tucked it into her bag, folded once. She sipped her wine until the glass was nearly empty, then set it down without rushing. The dining room had started to dim, the last of the dinner rush slipping into dessert. Outside, the evening light had softened, casting golden lines across the sidewalk like ribbon. A breeze stirred the rosemary pots on the front patio. Joan stood, looped the scarf loosely around her neck, and gathered her things. She didn't linger at the threshold, didn't turn back for one last look. She didn't need to. This wasn't a goodbye. It wasn't even a victory lap. It was a return, a quiet, powerful one. And as she stepped into the night, heels clicking softly, spine straight, heart unburdened, the thought came not like thunder, but like breath. Some tables you wait for, others you take back yourself.